And here we go again. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to my kitchen on this lovely Sunday evening. I do apologize if I am interrupting something by going live tonight. Usually I do this on Wednesdays, but I have been wanting to celebrate for the last couple of days, and I really couldn't wait any longer, and so just decided to throw together something very easy and simple, and of course, something involving some cast iron. What else would you expect? Um, I've been happy because the cast came off my arm on Friday. I am now using a wrist brace, which I can remove when needed, as said when I do my daily exercises, for instance. And so, yeah, I've been very happy about that. um, because, yeah, for that reason, well, actually, there really is not a lot of pain. I'm actually very happy about that. So, yeah, I think what I should probably do is get started with some cooking here so that I can give some, so that we can talk about it without my just standing around here. This is going to be a very simple stir fry, essentially a variation on corned beef hash because, yeah, we're using some of the leftover corned beef from St. Patty's Day. Now I'm also going to be have to cook up some potatoes, and normally I would cook these first, but I want to heat up the corned beef because there's a lot of fat in this, and I figure I can render this off, and we can cook the potatoes with this. If not, I can always throw in more. This is pre-cooked corned beef. Again, it's leftovers from St. Patrick's Day. And yeah, that turned out very well. For anyone who was kind enough to watch as we prepared the corned beef over the last couple of weeks, it certainly turned out, yeah, much to our satisfaction. My roommate Jamie and her family, they all very much love corned beef on St. Patty's Day or any other time of the year, and she was quite happy with this. So I'm very pleased that it met her satisfaction. Anyway, because of that, it's really no more than just heating this up. Yeah, it was in the fridge. It's been in the fridge. So, yeah, just heat this up until most of this fat is rendered off, at which point then we can throw in the potatoes. I should probably take out the meat nonetheless, so that it doesn't become too overcooked. But anyway, as I was saying, if anybody here does not know what's going on, it has been almost 2 months since I fractured my wrist. Unfortunately, this happened on Super Bowl Sunday, which was February 7th, I believe, when we were in the middle of a big snowstorm here in New England. I figured, especially because of the snow, I'd wanted to go out to the store, and I figured it would be safer to walk than to drive. Except that I didn't even make it to the end of my driveway before I took a nice spill on the ice. I slipped, came down hard on my wrist, and I had to go to the emergency room where, yes, it was in fact a fracture. So my wrist has been in a cast for pretty much all that time. It started out with an arm cast, and then they changed that to a wrist cast, till finally it has healed to the point where, as you can see, the cast is no longer here, and now I have just this wrist brace. And now, of course, my wrist, however, is extremely weak, unfortunately. It is difficult to lift most things with this. And so, of course, I have been assigned a series of exercises I have to do, which should get my wrist back in shape over the course of like the next 6 to 8 weeks or so. For the record, what seems to happen most of the time if I bend my wrist the wrong way or if I pick up something too much is, yes, there is some pain. But as soon as I let go, the pain disappears almost immediately. I mean, it is not a long-lasting pain. So that makes me think it's more like just muscle strain more than anything else, which is why I've got to build my muscles back up. All right, it looks like we've already reached the point where we can take out this corned beef here and start working on some potatoes. So this is a nice start. And fortunately, it's not an especially large stir fry, but definitely enough for a couple of good meals for a couple of people here. These are sliced yellow or golden potatoes. Golden potatoes, because I figure these should be good enough to hold most of their shape even as they become soft. I have tried making the stir fry with russet potatoes before, and yeah, the russet potatoes tend to dissolve and become mash. And while they are tasty, with the stir fry like this, you do want a little bit more bite to the potatoes. So that's why I'm going with golden potatoes. Anyway, hello, Rhythmic Hans. Well, thank you about that. Cooking is fine, but washing that heavy wok is the hard part. It's actually not going to be that hard. That's one of the nice things about cast iron is it's really not as hard to take care of as a lot of folks seem to think. Well, then again, cast iron has been making this big comeback over the past several years, so I'd say a lot of people are learning as well just how easy it is to maintain cast iron after it's been used. So I've been heating up this wok, for the record, for about 15 minutes or so on medium. And just before I went live, I turned the heat up to about somewhere between 6 and 7 out of 10 on my stovetop, so that it will be hot enough to really cook these potatoes. It's not quite the same as meat, unfortunately, in that you can, we do want to brown these potatoes, but yeah, they can get burned if you're not careful. Let me see. Meanwhile, one other thing here. Hi, Raymond and Wandering Sand and Jessica T and Bob S. I got a wrist problem now myself. I got bad bitten by a feral cat. My hand is swollen. Ouch. My condolences. With any luck, that will not be as long-lasting as my condition was. But yeah, you know how it is, unfortunately. It's like the limitations of not being able to move are almost as bad as the injury itself. I mean, without going into too much detail, obviously, I'm just glad now I was finally able to take a shower, a real shower, the best shower I had in a long time, in fact. Oh, after 2 months in that cast, the sensation of the water coming down on my wrist. Oh man, that was, yeah, I think I'll say that much. That was better than sex. And I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, thank you. One other thing, I guess, as I mentioned, this is a kind of like a corned beef hash stir fry, but not exactly your traditional corned beef hash, which usually uses leftover pre-cooked vegetables, kind of like a bubble and squeak. Also, I'm throwing in a couple of extra ingredients to this as well to make it, to add to the taste. And this is something I learned a while back, that these will really taste good when mixed in with some spinach and some mushrooms. And if you have never made a hash like that, well, I really very recommend you give this a try, because not only is it very easy, it has very few ingredients, as you can see. I may have to throw in a little bit more oil, in fact. It looks like that cooking oil took it up rather nicely. But yeah, this is the type of thing that I'm able to just throw together on a work night some nights, because it's just that easy and quick. 1 second, please. Just throw in just a little bit more oil. Not much, but a little. Okay. So yeah, this is a little bit non-traditional, which is how I like it. I mean, I hope I've mentioned, I like trying new things, and so doing things a little differently definitely appeals to me. Which is one reason why, among other things, I'm doing a stir fry on an electric stove rather than the usual gas stove. That's because that's all I have in my apartment, a cheap electric stove, and so I try to compensate for that. But let me see. While we're waiting, like Kane accident, yes. As I mentioned, I had in fact regrettably slipped on the ice in a snowstorm, came down hard on my wrist, and ended up with a fracture. It could have been a lot worse because when I came down, I also came down on my hip. Nothing at all happened to my hip. I mean, I never had any pain or anything at all from that. I guess it all went into my wrist. So potentially there could have been a hip fracture there. So yeah, see, as bad as this was, it could have been much, much worse. um, Okay, rabies shots might be needed. Well, yeah, you never know. The best I can say is speak to either your doctor or a vet about that. And if that's what they recommend, yeah, it's best to be safe. um, I know someone who broke their tailbone. Yeah, that was not fun either. No, that has not happened to me. This was my first broken bone. I know one. I have a friend who she is a very small person. Her build is very small and slight, and she had a baby, and the labor was so intense that it cracked her tailbone. So yeah, that was an experience that she does not want to repeat. It was her second child, so I'm presuming that after that, probably no more. She's doing fine, and that was several years ago. Otherwise, all we really have to do, as I said, is just heat up these potatoes to the point where they become soft, and then we add in a few spices, and then the spinach and mushrooms, and we are just about done. Well, no, we're not just about done now, but that's really all this is. As I said, it's a simple stir fry, and because of the modifications to it, I'm rather proud of this very simple recipe being my own. One that I very much encourage folks to give it a try. Because it may not be quite the same as your typical corned beef hash, but and again, there's nothing wrong with it. Nice thing is, of course, this time we're actually using leftover corned beef from St. Patty's Day, as opposed to the corned beef that you buy in a can. The stuff with the consistency of dog food. And there's nothing really wrong with using that stuff. I have actually made this stir fry with that kind of corned beef many times, and it still turns out good. This, of course, has a somewhat different consistency because of that. Nonetheless, let's see, what else do we have here? Yeah, since my wok is small, 9-inch to 10-inch medium would be enough. Medium would be enough warm up. Yeah, with good cast iron, really heating it up on medium is probably better than trying to blast it. As I mentioned, this is an electric stove. And so because of that, I cannot use the traditional thin wok that you might get really at a Chinese market or any other Asian market. Because obviously I cannot flip it on this. I cannot flip this on the stove. The stove simply does not produce the blasting heat that's needed for you to do a traditional stir fry where you can toss the food in the wok. So instead, as I found out, and I know a lot of people are in that kind of a situation. I mean, not everybody has a fantastic stove. I wish I had a fantastic stove. But to compensate for that, as I found out, a thick, heavy cast iron wok like this does a good job of compensating for it. Because, of course, the cast iron absorbs the heat and holds it. And so because of that, after, as I said, about 15 minutes or so of preheating, it gets hot enough to do a nice, decent stir fry here. That's the other thing in that practically never heat up my cast iron much more than medium. I am much more of a fan of low and slow. As I said, heat it up on medium for about 15 minutes or so before cooking. The reason why is that, again, especially on an electric stove, if you try blasting it at high heat right away, all of the heat is concentrated in one single spot and doesn't really spread around very much. Because Cast iron is really not very good at conducting heat, and it conducts heat very slowly. That's why there are hot spots, and that's why the edges of the wok here are much cooler than the center. And the thing is because of that, if all of that heat is concentrated in one single spot, if you blast it on high, especially on an electric stove, it can over time actually cause the wok to warp. And in fact, to be absolutely honest, that's what I did to this wok over time. I've had this wok now for just a little more than 10 years. And especially at first when I was learning to cook and I didn't know any better, that's really what I did. I would often blast this thing to the point where it was incredibly hot, and just pouring oil in it would often start a fire. So I did not burn down my kitchen. No, thank goodness. I was lucky in that respect. And I have learned since then. That's the best I could say. Lessons learned. But nonetheless, that's one reason why I much prefer the low and slow method. I'm starting to smell these potatoes already now, so that means it's definitely time to start add a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and if anybody else makes this and they want to add their own spices, you can certainly do so. There is no reason not to. It's your stir fry, and you can make it the way you like it. I am a fan of actually very simple, basic tastes in that I don't smother this particular dish in spices. I would rather taste the potatoes and the corned beef and the spinach. Besides, the corned beef is quite flavorful in itself, especially since it was homemade corned beef. Still, I think these potatoes are looking pretty good on their own, and as you can see, all I did was really fry them up with just a little bit of oil. So this is actually, I feel, one of my better attempts at frying potatoes. So we're doing pretty good here tonight. Anyway, getting dizzy. I'm getting hungry. Well, that's kind of the idea here. Thank you very much for everybody who's shown up. And yeah, I do hope you're getting hungry. Cast iron is not an even cooker unless you give it a slow heating, but it does hold heat. Yes, it does, which is why a lot of times, I think I bumped this, a lot of times, if you really want good even heating and you want a nice blasting hot wok for a good stir fry, you may even want to take the whole wok, put it in your oven, and then blast your oven. Move your heat your oven up at like 500 degrees or hotter if you can for half an hour or more. Then, of course, you've really got to be careful because, of course, you've got this huge 500-degree piece of iron to put back on the stove. But if you do it that way, yes, it's definitely hot enough to really sear your stir fry. I did not do that in this case, only because I didn't think it was necessary. This is a nice, easy, and gentle stir fry, and I'm not searing meats, and so it's really not absolutely necessary to go for the incredibly blasting hot that we see, especially in Chinese restaurants. Instead, these are turning out to be some nicely cooked potatoes by themselves. So I think we're getting to the point where we can start adding in other things. Yeah, as you can see, these things are softening to the point where it's pretty easy to, just to cut them with the spatula. So anyway, that's why this is an American stir fry in an American kitchen on a cheap American stove. I have been criticized because it's YouTube. No matter what you put on YouTube, you're gonna get criticism, which is why I laugh at most of it. But I've received comments about how this is an insult to good wok chefs, and I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not trying to be a fancy Asian wok chef. Maybe if I had a nice gas stove with a rocket engine or jet engine of the kind that they have in the restaurants, then I would do my best to try to compete with them. But I don't, so I don't. Instead, I just do what I enjoy, which is nice and easy cooking. This would never get anywhere if I worked at a restaurant, but I don't. Anywho, I just ate rigatoni and steamed zucchini with marinara. Oh, that sounds pretty darn good right there. So, and from there. But once again, I appreciate everybody showing up on a Sunday evening. I have played with this wok on YouTube Live before, but then again, as I said, this is one of the most used items in my kitchen, and I love this wok for that because there's really, I feel, nothing better for a good stir fry than a wok. Yes, you can use a nice large cast iron skillet, and you will get a nice good stir fry with a skillet. Only that I feel with a wok, it does better. Because of the shape of the wok, it's less likely that the food is going to spill out, and you've got a lot more room for it. Not to mention, as long as you get to use a good wok shovel or chan, then yeah, definitely this is the way to go. I'd say at this point we can just go ahead, which means that really we're probably more than halfway done with this stir fry here. That's how easy it is to make this, and that's why, as I said, this is the type of thing you could even make on a work night because it's so simple. And you can practically make this with one hand. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we just throw in the corned beef. And the corned beef, since it's already been pre-cooked, I can probably even, just after a few seconds, just move on. So from here, all I can do is do another thing that gets a lot of chefs angry. Use a little bit of minced garlic. And yeah, I know. It's like minced garlic. Why don't you take the time to chop your own garlic? Well, look at my wrist. That's one reason why. Also, you have to admit it is convenient. There's no denying that. And even though it's kind of like cheating, so be it. I don't deny that, taking the time really to gently saute your own garlic will really amplify the flavor of this. On the other hand, this is going to taste pretty darn good as it is, too. So, and that took all of just a few seconds. So, really nothing to it. This is why, especially because of the non-standard ingredients, a couple of times now I've called it a chaos hash, and I don't like that. I think I will, in fact, rename it on my website to that, because that's pretty much what this is, chaos. It's unexpected, random, and it has infinite possibilities too. As I said, if you want to, you can, of course, throw your own spices in at this point. Parsley, rosemary, thyme, whatever you want to put with a good stir fry. Me, I'm quite happy because we've got a lot of taste in this already. We've got some nice cooked potatoes with salt and pepper and garlic, and especially the corned beef, which is why from here, now we're ready to go on to the next step. This is where things get a little different. And we throw in some fresh spinach. Oh, yeah. So one thing I learned, and I'm very happy to have learned, is that even though, as I mentioned, in some ways, in some ways there is no such thing as cheating, there are only shortcuts. So I don't mind using canned corned beef, for instance, or a number of canned vegetables, canned beans, canned corns. One thing I am never going to use again, unless it's an absolute emergency, is canned spinach. In that is how I used to cook the stir fry back in the days before I really learned how to cook. But as anybody knows, the difference between canned spinach and fresh spinach is out of this world, especially since it's only going to take a couple of minutes for all of this spinach to wilt as it cooks, to the point where, no, this is not going to overwhelm the dish. I did use a whole 10-ounce bag of spinach, for the record, but you can see how it is shrinking already. All you really have to do is just spread it around. And little by little, the spinach is shrinking. The incredible shrinking spinach. Yes, you can make all the Popeye jokes you want. I love Popeye. Classic Popeye. I grew up with vintage black and white Popeye. Yeah, the original Max and Dave Fleischer Popeye the Sailor cartoons. And even the later color Popeye cartoons from famous studios, Paramount. So yes, I do know about Popeye. Popeye is one of those characters just really waiting for a good comeback. I'm not sure how they would manage to make him come back here in the modern era of the internet and everything, but I would take a chance and see what happens. Because, yeah, I'm also, since I grew up as a kid, I was one of those weird kids in that, you know how when you're a kid, you're not supposed to like spinach. It's supposed to be, yuck, spinach. And you can say the same thing about broccoli. I never had a problem with that. I have loved spinach my whole life. Continue to do so. Except for the canned stuff. As I said, I've learned my lesson. Not only that, the canned stuff, it stains too. If I had used canned spinach in this, all of this would turn a rather disgusting looking dark green. It would be colored by the spinach. The taste wouldn't be bad, but fresh spinach is so much better. By the way, you notice how much this is, the spinach has shrunk at this point? Oh yeah, and I apologize as well for all the scraping of this metal spatula. This is by far my favorite wok shovel. I practically consider this thing to be a magic wand. Yes, you can use a wooden wok shovel, but I prefer this. It's light, very durable. It feels great in my hand, and this is my non-injured hand. And despite the sound, I much prefer using this. Notice at this point again, the spinach has shrunk and it continues to shrink. There we go. Now we're starting to get somewhere. Let's check a couple more comments. Thank you for everybody who's stuck around. You should introduce curls to your local gym with cast iron skillets. Yeah, that's tempting. Yes, we go through that too. If only they could bring back if they can bring back Tom and Jerry, there's room for Popeye. Yeah, that's true. Homemade pizza and cast iron. Oh, that sounds great. I'm aiming to try another pizza this coming Friday myself. So my wife is from Thailand, Garway. My wife is from Thailand, so she's accustomed to using a wok. The truth is, she prefers using my grandmother's mid-50s Griswold No. 8 skillet for most dishes. Well, we won't tell anyone. What can we say? Your wife has taste. She knows quality. There we go. Spinach is now nice and wilted in a very pleasant dark green color at this point. We're almost done. This is not going to be like an hour or an hour and a half, by the way. Largely because it's a Sunday evening, and I know there are other things going on, other live YouTube videos or other things you do on a Sunday evening. But even so, I appreciate everybody who has stuck around for this. See, this is what I mean. The spinach is not overwhelming the dish, which means now it's time for the final ingredient. Some mushrooms. In fact, I think this might even be too many. What? There's such a thing as too much mushrooms? Oh, gee, maybe I should fry these separate mushrooms afterwards. Wouldn't that be awful? And once these mushrooms are done, we will be done. And that's how easy it is to put this stir fry together here. Only a few simple ingredients. Each one has their own unique flavor, and they all blend together wonderfully. Does not require a ton of spices. I like dishes with a ton of spices, just this is not one of them. And once this is done, it will be time to eat. At this point, the potatoes are definitely good and soft. And yeah, that's what I mean. If these were russet potatoes, they would have turned to mash by now. So that's why I'm glad I used golden potatoes. Anyway, this is really as simple as that. And if you want to try this dish, well, first of all, I hope you like it. And once again, feel free to add whatever spices or additional ingredients you want to put in this. Consider this a template to work on. See how easy that was? Oh yeah, love mushrooms. You can never have enough. Boy, is that true. I had to learn to enjoy mushrooms. Oh, my condolences for that, Linguophile 88. And I'm not making fun of you. I mean, I understand, it's everybody's taste when they're kids, but I'm glad since then that you've learned, just how wonderful mushrooms are. And thank you for a Ver Carrel dinner. I'm not sure what that means actually, but I will take that as a compliment. So, because as you can see, there's really nothing to it. It was that easy. And at this point, we are pretty much all set, which is why one last thing I want to show folks. Give me 1 second, please. Pull this out of the refrigerator. Where did it go? There it is. Now, with your typical corned beef hash, it's usually traditional to put a fried egg on top, and there's really nothing wrong with that. But with this, especially with all of the vegetables and everything, I like the taste when you serve this topped with sour cream or feta cheese, which is exactly what we have here, some crumbled feta. That really helps to give this a more unique flavor. And yet again, let me turn this off now because there's no need to keep this on. It's something I would very much encourage you to try. Here we are. Besides, any excuse for feta is a good excuse. Which is why all we need to do now is yep. Just toss plastic cover. Get rid of that. Just put a little bit of this feta on top. And we are done. This is exactly how we will serve it. So this is our supper tonight. And I do hope everybody likes it. So this was done, as I mentioned, in a large cast iron 14-inch wok. Yes, a smaller wok will work just fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Likewise, if you want to make this in a cast iron skillet, there's nothing wrong with doing that either. I mean, feel free. It's your dish, your kitchen. Please feel free to experiment with the tools you have. But anyway, that's it, and that's as easy as it is. As I mentioned, I've been, ever since this cast came off, I've had this burning urge to cook, and that's why I just could not wait, and I just had to do this tonight. So I can only, because this is definitely therapeutic, mentally and physically. This all feels good. My wrist feels fine. So which is why, once again, that's how it is. So as always, I do hope everybody tries. I do hope you're interested in trying a dish like this. And that's, well, as I can say, this is what we do on this channel. I've been doing more live videos recently, largely because, again, of the injury to my wrist. But I am working on another pre-recorded and edited video, which should be done shortly. Otherwise, once again, thank you everybody for showing up here. Ray Laws, Fluffy Otter 2, Bookworm 73, Jessica T, Brent Griffin, hello from Minnesota, Wandering Sam. Now I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you. So, oh yes, Release Troubled. Yes, he's been in the other room with my roommate. So he has been very comforting as well during all of this. And again, all I can say is thank you everybody for showing up. Now we have to eat. So once again, I will see you again on this Wednesday on Cast Iron Wednesday. Until then, have yourself a good evening, folks. Thank you for watching.